is that the New Orleans Pelicans have fired their general manager, Dell Demps, today. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News. Stephen A., again, off for the day, back from sick leave, back on First Take, back in Charlotte for the NBA All-Star Game, but one more day with his buddy, his nemesis, his rival, his debate partner, Will Cain, hanging out with you on the Stephen A. Smith Show today, brought to you by Uber. Uber Rewards is going to make you love Uber even more. Get all the info and terms at uber.com/rewards. You remember in Oliver Stone's movie JFK, or just from history, around the assassination of John F. Kennedy, remember when Lee Harvey Oswald would yell out, "I'm a patsy, I'm a patsy"? My history is foggy, but he may have been yelling that as Jack Ruby stepped into the underground parking lot of the Dallas Police Department before Jack Ruby took Lee Harvey Oswald down. Lee Harvey Oswald maintained, he screamed, "I'm a patsy." Now, that doesn't mean that Lee Harvey Oswald was innocent. That doesn't mean Lee Harvey Oswald was perfect, that he never did anything wrong, and that doesn't mean Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It just means he wasn't alone. Dell Demps is a patsy. Once again, the breaking news from ESPN today is that Dell Demps, general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans, has been relieved of his duties today. He has been fired, and I ask you, why now? Why today? Why Dell Demps? It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. ESPN's NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski, he went on the 12 o'clock Sports Center just a few moments ago, and he gave us the background. Here's why Dell Demps is unemployed today.
New Orleans owner Gail Benson was especially livid last night, I'm told, with Anthony Davis leaving the arena before the game was over. He had an injured shoulder and left the building during the win over Oklahoma City.
Last night, the New Orleans Pelicans beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 131-122. But at the end of the first half, Anthony Davis went up to block a shot by Nerlens Noel and banged shoulders with Noel. He left right before halftime with that injured shoulder. According to ESPN's Ramona Shelburne, it's, quote, nothing too bad. But while he was back behind the scenes in the locker room, and as the Pelicans took the court in the second half, Anthony Davis didn't join him. He was nowhere to be seen. And then the report said, in fact, he'd left the Smoothie King Center. He had left the building. Folks, AD has left the building, reported to go get an MRI. But this was a thing. This was apparently not just a routine medical play in New Orleans. This was something that ownership was, quote, livid about. After the game, Alvin Gentry, the New Orleans Pelicans head coach, was asked about Anthony Davis leaving, and he said, "I'm happy for the guys who played the game, and we won." When asked about AD, constantly refocused the attention back to the players who were on the court. There's an increasing divide between AD and the guys on the court. There's an increasing divide between AD and Gentry. There's an increasing divide between Anthony Davis and the entire organization. Can you imagine? He doesn't want to be here. Why would he play for us? I don't want to be here with him. Why would I play for him? Last night on TNT, I thought Kenny Smith gave us the perfect analogy. It's the analogy of ownership versus renting, commitment versus not. He said, when you rent a car from Enterprise or Hertz or National, whoever is your preferred choice, when you rent a car, do you ever take it to the car wash? Do you vacuum out the interiors? You armor all the tires? Do you take care of that rental car the way you do when it's yours? Smart analogy by Kenny Smith. This is a rental now. This relationship between Anthony Davis and the Pelicans, it's not ownership. It's not commitment. It's not one and the same. It's a short-term rental. The whole damn thing is falling apart. So why now and why on Dell Demps? In all seriousness, why now and why on Dell Demps? If your coach, if Alvin Gentry is describing this rental car arrangement, is describing this entire who's with us, who's against in situation, if he's describing it like this, tell me why this is Dell Demps' fault. Here is Alvin Gentry after the game last night.
I'm happy for all of them. I'm happy for all of them, because to tell you the truth, this whole thing has been a dumpster fire, and it's just hard, for guys. We want guys to be professional and we want them to do this, but it's hard for guys, to go through what they've been through and to be able to come out and beat a team of that quality. I'm happy for all the guys. I just thought that they did a great job. Don't know if he left the building or not. I have no idea.
The whole thing is a dumpster fire. He didn't. Did you hear the end? I'm sorry I jumped the cut there. Did you hear it at the end? I don't even know if he left the building or not. I don't know. Alvin Gentry, head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. The whole thing is a dumpster fire, and it has fallen today on the head of Dell Demps. Now, just like my Lee Harvey Oswald analogy, I'm not telling you that Dell Demps is blameless. I'm not telling you even that it's any one of those pillars of a successful organization. But why today? Why after AD leaves the building? Why after his whole organization is turned into a rental car arrangement? Why now? Why today for Dell Demps? Again, our ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski on what led to this in the long run. This summer, you have to ask yourself, why is it the argument today? Dell Demps was dealt a horrendous hand when it comes to this Anthony Davis situation. He was asked by ownership not to sell Anthony Davis on the cheap. He was forced to try to deal with the Lakers. And to both across the league and within the building, it was suggested that's not what we want to do here. Not now, not them. Dell Demps did what he could with a losing situation, a situation that is now upturning not one, not two, but three franchises in the NBA, from the Lakers to the Pelicans to the Boston Celtics potentially. This entire Anthony Davis saga is disrupting three organizations. Now, who is to blame for that? That specific part of this equation, not the Boogie Davis, not the Boogie Cousins trade, not the Buddy Hield trade, not the inability to bring something around Anthony Davis, but this specific situation. Who is to blame? You really think it's Dell Demps? You even think it's Gail Benson, who now wants to overhaul her organization? The one she owns in New Orleans? No. There's a stranger in the house. That's what's going on here. There's a stranger in the house. You all know what's going on here. We all know. When you have Anthony Davis connected to Clutch Sports, connected to LeBron James, you have an influence and triumvirate across this league that is now messing with three organizations. Dell Demps may not need to be running the Pelicans anymore, but the reason he lost it today is because of Clutch Sports, Rich Paul, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis trying to force the hand of an organization that didn't want to be forced. That's what happened here. And that's the price that was exacted on Dell Demps' head. That's Straight Talk. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. You can tell me what you think. Is Dell Demps a patsy, or was it just high time for him to be out in New Orleans? 888-729-3776. It's Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. Smith today. He'll be back with you on Monday. I'll be back to my normal slot where you can find me 3 to 6 Eastern Time following Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and SiriusXM Channel 80. You can also see me on First Take most mornings, hanging out with Molly, Max, and Stephen A. Let's move forward. There was another big story that came out yesterday, this one from The Athletic. According to reports on that website, the AAF, the new football organization giving us spring football, has reached out to a big-time quarterback, reached out to a big-name quarterback, and according to Bill Polian, when he told Lindsey Jones at The Athletic, offered a deal for one Colin Kaepernick. The AAF was interested in bringing Colin Kaepernick into their league. And in response, they were met with this: a $20 million ask from Kaepernick to play in the AAF. Now, players in the AAF generally receive 3-year, $250,000 contracts. That's the going rate across the league. Now, Colin Kaepernick's worth much more than that. You and I both know that. If Colin Kaepernick, set aside his play, whatever you think of where he ranks in the pecking order of quarterbacks and how that translates to what those guys make in the NFL. If Colin Kaepernick joined the AAF, what do you think would happen to their ratings? You know they'd go up. You'd watch, I'd watch, you'd root for him, or you'd root against him. Colin Kaepernick would be instant box office for the AAF. So he's worth more than your $250,000 contract in that league. And I'm sure the AAF knows that. So what's he worth? I don't know. To them, $3 million a year, $5 million a year. Want to go as high as $10 million a year? Far and away more than anybody else in that league makes. But okay, because, hey, ratings are king. Colin Kaepernick will drive ratings. Whatever number you come up with, it won't be $20 million. This is not the NFL. Colin Kaepernick asking for $20 million from the AAF was Colin Kaepernick saying, I'm not interested in playing football. And we have to start being real about what Colin Kaepernick wants. Like him, love him, hate him. Be real. At this point, Colin Kaepernick is more interested in being a symbol and a martyr than being a quarterback. When you have passed on this many opportunities, who knows what really happened in Seattle with Pete Carroll suggesting he's too good to be a backup quarterback. Who knows what happened there? We know the opportunity that potentially existed in Baltimore with the Ravens. It was scuttled, at least in part, by his girlfriend in her social media posts. And now, at a minimum, a third opportunity to play quarterback again to get your career back going again. Even if it's beneath you, man. Past. Not just past, but asked for an impossible ask. Colin Kaepernick is a participant in a lawsuit. Colin Kaepernick is a symbol to many for different things. Colin Kaepernick, for some, is a martyr for a cause. And those things are now important, more important to him than being a quarterback. You can't pass on that many opportunities. Dan Le Batard on the Dan Le Batard show today said, more power to him if Kaepernick wants $20 million. Listen.
I think he'd be worth a lot in terms of advertising for your league. If somebody were to sign him, he should be asking for a lot there. If you're going to ask me to compromise the principles that mean a collusion case against the NFL and the idea that I've clearly been literally blackballed, what's that worth?
I agree. He's worth more than what you normally get in the AAF. But I think what Dan's opinion there reveals exactly what I'm telling you. My participation in a lawsuit and my allegiance to a cause are more important than my football career. You see, you don't have to hear that and hate that. You don't have to hear that and pass a value judgment on it. All you have to do is hear that and realize that it's true. It's true. Love it, hate it, it's just a fact. If you're passing on these opportunities, these things you're retaining that are more important to you are more important than the opportunity. You see, at some point you move forward. No matter what life deals you, bad hands, unjust hands, at some point, you look around and you go, how do I move forward? And it doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be fair. It just has to be. Sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forward. If Colin Kaepernick believes being an NFL quarterback is in his future, don't you think wowing everybody in the AAF would be a quicker path to getting back on the field than through a lawsuit? Stu Gott's hanging out with Dan Le Batard on the Dan Le Batard show today said this.
a guy who was close to winning a Super Bowl, close to getting to another Super Bowl. I think many people feel if he still played in the NFL, he'd be like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Man, yeah, that's worth a lot. It's certainly him asking for north of $20 million is not ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, Stugatz. It's ridiculous if you want to get a deal done. It's ridiculous if you wanted to actually play in the AAF. It's ridiculous if you thought that was an opportunity for you that you were going to entertain. You know what's not ridiculous? You could have saved both the typeface in every article written, and you could have saved the amount of ink spilled in newspapers if you just said, no, thank you. Because that's what you're saying by asking for $20 million. No, I'm not interested. In a much shorter and more efficient way. You're saying, no, I'm not going to play in the AAF. And fine, if that's what you don't want to do, that's fine. You don't have to. But you don't have to be a quarterback either. You don't have to play in the NFL. You don't have to play in the AAF. You don't have to play at all. I'm beginning to think that's what Colin Kaepernick wants. Let's hit the phone lines. I see the phone lines are lit up over Anthony Davis, Dell Demps. See what you folks have to say. What's up with Richard in Manhattan? What's up, Richard?
Hi, Will. Well, Anthony Davis may not make the playoffs, probably not, and LeBron James looks like he's not. Now, LeBron's Lakers are number 10 in the Western Conference, and to finish 8th, there's no bargain because then they're going to play Golden State, so they'll be eliminated. So they got to make up 4 games against with Utah. Utah's 4 games ahead of them. Lakers got 25 games left. Big choice.
Wow, he really stuck the landing on that one. I could literally hear Richard hang up when he ran out of things to say. Big choice. Here's the thing. On Anthony Davis, we have to start acknowledging the role that LeBron James and Clutch Sports and Rich Paul have played in this entire thing. When I said to you there's a stranger in the house, you have to start acknowledging the role that these influences are playing. I think this is a fascinating story. LeBron James, Rich Paul, went to a Duke game recently, traveled out to North Carolina, went and watched Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, and Cam Reddish play a game. And that raised some eyebrows, right? There's some people out there, I don't know that received a ton of criticism, but it raised some eyebrows. Now, why? Why did that raise eyebrows? Why did people go, huh, look at that. Look who's in the stands watching Zion Williamson. Now, why do you think that is? Some people look at that and go, life's not fair to LeBron. Everybody's always criticizing LeBron. Everybody's got a hard word to say about LeBron. Others might say, look what's happening in New Orleans. LeBron James is an extremely powerful and influential man, and more power to him. If he can recruit, if he can influence, if he can entice people to come play with him or be signed by his agency, more power to him. But do the rest of us have to be blind to the fact that those influences and power are taking place? Do the rest of us have to be blind to the fact that LeBron and Rich Paul are pulling or trying to pull a lot of strings across the NBA? Do the rest of us have to blame Dell Demps for everything going on? Joel in Oregon. What's up, Joel?
Hey, you nailed it with the Kaepernick thing. Now, Dell Demps, I knew that he was going to get fired because he blew it. He should have pulled the trigger on the Laker trade. He's not going to get a better offer. The Lakers offered him 4 possible stars, 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, cap relief space, and he, out of stubbornness, did not make that deal. They would have been a much better team. There wouldn't have been drama. They've got some good pieces already on that team, and I believe that's why he lost his job, out of stubbornness.
All right, I appreciate the call, Joel. I have 3 responses to you, okay? Number 1, I don't know that I agree with you that deal from the Lakers was the best deal out there for the Pelicans. I don't know that any of those guys are stars, much less 4 of them, between Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, Zubac, and or Josh Hart. I can't say with any certainty that any of those guys are going to be stars in the NBA. So I'm not sure that's the best deal, especially when the Celtics are lurking out there this summer. And the Celtics, who are very confident in themselves and confident in their ability to swoon Anthony Davis over a year's time frame to persuade him to stay. If they're dangling Jason Tatum, that's the star in the deal. And they have all the draft picks. They have all the young talent to sweeten it around Jason Tatum that the Lakers do. In fact, they have more. Second, ownership was apparently on the same page with Dell Demps when it came to that trade. They didn't want the Pelicans making it at that time or with the Lakers. I don't think he was being stubborn against the wishes of his employers. I think he was doing exactly what they wanted. And I'll give you my third reason. When we come back, it's Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. Smith. I'm going to lay out for you why it is. I think Dell Demps has been the patsy, but also I want to get more into this LeBron James and clutch sports thing and whether or not he and his team showing up to watch Duke is being unfairly criticized. We're all really beginning to see the power they wield across the sport of basketball. That's next on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people!
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A!
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
So when you do live reads, you do them in this. Took a trip to North Carolina, not for the All-Star game, but last weekend to go to Cameron Indoor Arena to see Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, Coach K, Cam Reddish, play against the Virginia Cavaliers. And boy, did they see a game, and boy, did they see a block from Zion Williamson. Well, that raised a few eyebrows. The fact that LeBron and Rich Paul, and by the way, some other Lakers like Rajon Rondo went as well, to go see the Dukies play. Now, LeBron spoke to ESPN's Dave McMenamin about this, and here's what he said about people whose eyebrows might have been raised. He says, as some have questioned, a recruiting trip? I didn't talk to anybody. They're only saying that because it's Rich, meaning Rich Paul. When Shaq came to see me play in high school, when AI came to see me play in high school, they weren't saying it was a recruiting trip then, but because it's Rich Paul and LeBron, now it's a recruitment trip. He goes on. Now Rich is a threat to everybody, and look at it, and they want to keep trying to jab my agent and jab my friend. What is he doing that's wrong? They don't say that about no other agent when other guys go see players. They don't say that about no other agent but my guy because he's the threat. And then he says this. And he's African-American too. Throw that in there. No, LeBron. No. These aren't the reasons that people's eyebrows are raised when you show up at Duke. Let us go through this step by step. Now, first of all, you're right. Legends, NBA players, Hall of Famers go see the next big thing often, and they did for you, like AI and Shaq showing up. But you know what AI and Shaq were? They weren't you. They were basketball players, great basketball players, legends. Is LeBron James just a basketball player? No, nor does he pretend to be, nor does he want to be. He's a mogul. He's a media mogul. He's a powerhouse, now in L.A., now in Hollywood. He's a producer. And he is a co-owner in a sports agency. You don't get to just be Shaq and AI when you want and be a powerhouse mogul when you want. You're both at all times. That's who you are. So when a powerhouse mogul and agency entrepreneur and all kinds of flattering words about the career you've built for yourself off the court, LeBron, goes and sees a high school player and then a college player play ball, people raise their eyebrows. So you see the difference between LeBron and Shaq and AI and that comparison and why it falls weak? And then let's go to the next part about Rich Paul, his buddy, his agent, his partner. He says they don't do it with other agents. They don't do it with other guys out there, but my guy, because he's a threat. That may be. That's the one part of this that I'm willing to admit. You may have a point there. Rich Paul's on the come up. Clutch is on the come up. It's big time. And other agencies are threatened by it, I'm sure. Other players in the basketball world are threatened by it. And that may receive unwarranted negative attention coming your and Rich Paul's way. I get that. I think that's a valid point. I want to be fair here. This isn't the LeBron James criticism hour. This is the let's be fair and tell the truth hour. And that leads us to our last point. And he's African-American too. Throw that in there. That is gratuitous, as far as I can tell, inaccurate, and weak. Why would Rich Paul's race have something to do with this? Has somebody made a racial charge? Has somebody made a racial suggestion? Has somebody said something in any way impugning Rich Paul in a way that is at all related to his race? I don't see that. Certainly don't see it in this instance right here. Here's why people raise their eyebrows. Be clear here. People raise their eyebrows because, as I've laid out, LeBron is a mogul. And second, they've seen Rich Paul and Clutch Sports already be very active when it comes to other big players. We only have to rewind the news cycle or this show 15 minutes. We only have to rewind the news cycle 30 minutes to see the influence and ripple effects of Rich Paul and Clutch Sports' influence. Dell Demps was just fired by the Pelicans. Anthony Davis just requested a trade from his organization. Anthony Davis wanted to specifically go to the Lakers, where, oh yeah, LeBron James plays. And Anthony Davis is represented by... oh yeah, Clutch Sports. Whenever something big seems afoot, earthquakes in the world of basketball and ripple effects taking place, and we see that Clutch Sports is involved, do you not think we're going to raise our eyebrows when we see you show up with no nefarious intentions? And by the way, if you are recruiting him, bravo to be a client at Clutch Sports. Just don't turn and play the victim. Don't turn and torture analogies. Don't turn and use bad logic to put yourself in the victim seat. You're big time. You're mogul. People walk in fear, and they certainly raise their eyebrows when you make moves. Own it. Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. today. Now, when it comes to LeBron James and these situations with ownership and Anthony Davis, the New Orleans Pelicans, NBA legend Charles Barkley had a few things to say last night on TNT. He said this about the relationship and the fine line we're walking here between owners and players. Listen.
I hear all these clowns on TV talking about it's great that all these players are exuding these powers. Let me tell you guys something. Workers ain't never going to have power over their ownership. Ever. Now, it might work for a couple of guys here or there, but in the history of the world, no workers have ever overtaken the people who own a business. And when these guys are sitting home locked out in a couple of years, I want y'all to remember I told y'all that.
Charles went on to say, what happens when LeBron is an owner? Now, reports are LeBron James wants to be an owner in the NBA, not unlike Michael Jordan. What happens when that shoe's on the other foot? What happens when that management-labor relationship flips the other way? How will LeBron handle the situations? How will he handle it when the next big upstart? Huh? When the next LeBron James, and there'll be another big time. Maybe it might not be Giannis, might not be Zion, might not be Luka. Maybe it's younger. Maybe it's a kid who's in junior high right now, but he's got his own empire planned. And what happens when he starts influencing players across the NBA? What happens when he starts influencing one of LeBron's players? I'm just curious, when that shoe's on the other foot, how will that ownership, labor relationship go for LeBron then? You know what never goes out of style? Surprising a friend or loved one with buy one, get one free multicolored roses and bouquets for $29.99 from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. One last one on this Anthony Davis situation and how it's involved with LeBron and Clutch and the Pelicans. Again, it's Charles Barkley, TNT NBA analyst.
It's unfortunate. I've said before the season, I thought he was the second best player in the world, and he's a great person. But when guys start letting, that's like anybody who worked for me, I make sure they know they work for me. We don't work together, they work for me. Because you know what? I can get somebody to do what they do. They can't get nobody to do what I do. There ain't been Anthony Davis walking around. And the situation, and I said last week, and it's gotten worse already. This is a bad situation. It's a bad look for the NBA because that kid can't go out there and give 100% because he can't worried about getting hurt. The Pelicans ain't trying to win. And you see already, I mean, he's had less than 3 points twice in the last week. That's ridiculous. That's not a good look for the NBA. It's not a good look for New Orleans. It's just bad.
By the way, Anthony Davis had 3 points and 6 rebounds the other night against the Magic. And I don't understand what the Pelicans are supposed to do. They run him out there. He gets his shoulder hurt. against the Thunder. They compromise their asset. They don't get the trade value back for him that they want. But they sit him, they get fined $100,000 by the NBA. What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do if you're Gail Benson? What are you supposed to do if you're Dell Demps? Oh, that's right. If you're Dell Demps, you get fired for these situations. If you miss any of the show today, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One, what's in your wallet? There was a fascinating debate brought up by Scottie Pippen yesterday. You're familiar with it. We're all familiar. It's LeBron versus MJ. But Scottie Pippen weighed in yesterday on First Take, and it made me think about something listening to Scottie, listening to Max, listening to Stephen A., listening to this debate that goes on and on about MJ versus LeBron. It made me think about something. What happened to conversation about Kareem and Bill Russell, or for that matter, Tim Duncan? What happened to conversations about the big man in the NBA? That's next on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio.
Gentlemen,
So they're not going to go there?
Nah, don't do that. Go ahead and hang out.
I'm in on the AF. Are you not in on it?
I'm not in on the AF, no.
Come on.
I'm not out on it. I'm just not in on it. Like
we need more football. We love football.
We don't need more football.
We do.
We do love football, but we don't need more football. Part of the reason why we love football is because it's a scarce commodity.
I get that, but I made this argument to Max Kellerman the other day on First Take. I get the whole scarcity argument.
Right.
Once a week is the scarcity. We don't have games. Actually, it's Thursday, Sunday, Monday.
I didn't watch one AAF game, and I don't plan on watching one. It doesn't get me going. I'm sorry.
It's well, at least for the first weekend, more exciting than an NBA regular season game, according to viewers.
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
The 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming to you live from the Seaport District at Pier 17, brought to you by Chase. Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. Smith today. Guess what? Our man, Stephen A., he's going to join me in just about 15 minutes here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. We'll do it like we always do it on First Take. We're going to have a few debates, a few conversations. Let's talk a little bit Kaepernick and the AAF. Let's talk a little bit of Dell Demps, because the breaking news of the day had some takes. When asked about MJ versus LeBron, Scottie Pippen had this to say.
When I look at LeBron, he's not what Michael was as a player. He's not even what Kobe Bryant was as a player. So when you talk about trying to compare Michael's instinct, his ability to take over games, his ability to want to have that last shot.
And demoralize you.
Yes.
And scare the living hell out of you.
For a win. Anybody that saw Michael Jordan play knew he was undeniable. It was just cold-blooded, unstoppable, undeniable. And LeBron, as great as he is, and he is great, generationally great, all-time great, historically great, he isn't that. It's like, what do you value? The undeniable play versus the right play? The individual achievement or the guy that's supposed to do it for his team? But for a guy that's supposed to do it for his team, the funny thing about LeBron is there are a lot of teammates that say it's incredibly hard to play with him. So what you end up with is it's just honestly not a fair comparison. MJ wins all day, every day. And when it's an argument, most people expand it to Kobe as well. What about Kobe? But here's the question I want to ask you. I don't want to have MJ versus LeBron. I don't want to have even MJ versus LeBron versus Kobe. I want to have a different conversation because I'm fascinated that when we have this, when we talk about this, all-time greats, we always leave out the big man. Now, is it because we can project ourselves into a wing? Like they look like average height on the floor, even though they're not? Like because we can see a really tall guy and a really short guy, the one in the middle must be us. And so we really honor the guy that plays on the wing, that plays both ways. Is that what we do? Is it because of Michael that we're just always trying to find the next Michael? The best player in the game's got to be like Michael. I'm just curious, where is it and why is it we don't talk about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Bill Russell or even more recently, Tim Duncan? Tim Duncan is absolutely insulted when it comes to these GOAT conversations. Now, be clear. I'm not putting Tim in the MJ-LeBron debate. All I'm saying is, why do we never, ever talk about them? MJ, LeBron, Kobe, fill out your all-time All-Stars. I saw Stephen A. do it the other day. Stephen A. put his 5 greatest All-Stars, or his favorite All-Star team, or the one he thought he could put together that would be the greatest and most undefeated, unbeatable All-Star team of all time. And he had one big man in there. He did. He had Shaq in there. It's just like 11 titles for Russell, 6 for Kareem, 3 MVPs, NBA Finals MVPs for Tim Duncan, with 5 titles, by the way. If you don't want to do it on titles because you say, okay, well, it's a team game, that's not right, Will. Let's talk about, impact on the game, individual achievement. Well, how about this? Still, today, all-time points leader, Kareem, 38,000 points. You know who's behind him? Another big guy that played power forward. He won a 5, but he was a 4, Karl Malone. And for that matter, by the way, after you go through a stretch of wings, then at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, big men in their day. Wilt, Dirk, Shaq, Moses Malone, Elvin Hayes, who was only 6'9", but he was a big man in his day, and Hakeem Olajuwon. So 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, all playing the 4, 5. All in different ways, not the same player, all different players, but all big men. I'm just asking, what are we supposed to do here? If titles, you can point to big men like Russell, and points, you can point to big men like Kareem, why do we just ignore the big man? I'm genuinely curious. Why do we ignore them? Kind enough to let me sit in his seat today and drive the captain's chair. He should be joining us in just a moment here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. I got a lot I want to talk to the man about, but he's down in Charlotte for the All-Star game. By the way, NBA's All-Star Weekend begins tonight, presented by Boost Mobile. Check out the NBA Rising Stars Challenge at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on most ESPN radio stations. I got most of these people around here nervous today. What's Will want to talk about this? What is this? Let me run that through Chuck. Well, Chuck, what do you think about what Will wants to say about Kevin Durant? I don't know. Let's talk to Liam. I've been talking to everybody and telling them there's not many times that a massive news story, I'm talking about general interest news story, you can see bleed over into the world of sports. And I'm not telling you direct connections, but if you peel onion layers back, you begin to see connections. And I'm here to tell you today, there's a connection between Amazon pulling out of New York City and Kevin Durant becoming a Knick. I'm going to lay that out for you here in about 20 minutes on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. But right now, I'm joined by the man himself, Stephen A. Smith from Charlotte, North Carolina. What's up, man?
What's going on, Will Kane? Appreciate you filling in for me, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. How you feeling? You back? You feel good?
I'm back. I'm back. I'm feeling better. I'm not 100%, but I'm feeling better. I just had to do the first take down here in Charlotte and a whole bunch of other NBA obligations. That's why you're filling in for me. I really appreciate it. I know you're holding it down, but I hope you're remembering to be respectful and understand whose seat you're sitting in, and you are conducting yourself with the level of respect you're supposed to be giving out, sir.
Well, I'll have to put that to the audience. I will tell you, I took your little booster seat and I threw it across the room, and I got my feet up on the desk. All right, man. I got to ask you this. I think this news broke right after you got off the set of First Take today, and I opened your show with it about an hour ago, Dell Demps fired as general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans. Stephen A., can I just tell you, I believe he's being made a patsy of. I cannot believe he's the fall guy for, in their own coach's words, an absolute dumpster fire in New Orleans. What do you see?
I think you're right, and I put it on the air because Wojnarowski tweeted about it, like with 5 minutes left in the show for First Take, and it's absolutely what Alvin Gentry highlighted, and it's put Dell Demps in the line of fire. But I will say this: Dell Demps had been on the job for 9 years. There was only 3 playoff or 2 playoff appearances. Actually, it was 3 playoff appearances in that span. They had gotten past the first round just once. He did have ample opportunity to get the job done, and in some people's eyes, he did not. Now, where you and I really, really align in our thinking is the fact that when he wasn't able to, when Anthony Davis just dropped it on them via Clutch Sports and Rich Paul, you had them in their own way speaking out. You had Magic Johnson obviously speaking out about the Pelicans, and so that put the Pelicans and specifically Dell Demps in the line of fire, because when you have those people speaking out against you, names like Magic Johnson, LeBron James, Rich Paul, and those guys, if their names is attached to a story that obviously negatively affects you or enlightens people about you in some sort of negative light, that's not going to be a plus for a GM, particularly an African-American GM who has had 9 years to get the job done and failed to do so. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's predictable what transpired. It's not overly shocking. If I'm surprised by anything, is that I thought they would at least wait until the end of the season to make this move. The fact that it's happened now is slightly surprising, but it's far from earth-shattering. Clearly, they've wanted to move in a different direction. That's the scuttlebutt that we were hearing in the weeks leading up to the trading deadline, and it's now reached fruition.
Stephen A., what I can't figure out is the timing, man, because and you correct anything I get wrong here, but my understanding was that he was executing ownership's wishes in New Orleans in not trading AD at that time and not trading AD to the Lakers. He was in lockstep with Gail Benson and everyone else in New Orleans. If you told me today, and you did, and I can see it, and anybody can see it, that he just didn't do his job over 9 years to entice Anthony Davis to stay. He didn't build a team around him that avoided this situation in the first place. I would get that argument. But the timing of now makes it look like, why? He did what you wanted him to do.
Well, here's where it gets interesting, Will. Here's where it gets, and this is not me speaking to anybody this morning about it, Will. This is just what I deduced from my weeks of reporting on this story. I think the key to all of this that was most damaging to Dell Demps was Rich Paul and Clutch Sports revealing that the reason that they publicized Anthony Davis' desire to be traded was because they didn't trust that Dell Demps was taking their request back to ownership in the fashion that they were disseminating it to him. Mm-hmm. That's what I get the impression of. Anthony Davis getting checked for an MRI. Anthony Davis didn't want to be there. Anthony Davis giving indications that he didn't want to be there, wanting to address it with discretion behind the scenes, not publicizing it or putting the Pelicans in a bad situation. They swear that it's something that they tried to do with Dell Demps, but Dell Demps, they didn't trust that he was going back to ownership and revealing it to them, the details that they wanted revealed. So essentially that forced their hand. So if you're the Pelicans, you're thinking about all of this bad PR, the kind of stuff that you've been involved in. And if you reach the conclusion that it happened because the agents that have to deal with Dell Demps had no respect for him, no trust for him, or the combination of the two, then that would incentivize you as an ownership to move in a different direction.
Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today on the Stephen A. Smith radio show on ESPN Radio. Hanging out with Stephen A. I know I only have you for another 6 minutes or so, Stephen A., so let me see if I can hit 2 topics with you.
Sure.
One, you've alluded to twice now, and I talked about it earlier. We got to start being real honest. And I don't think honesty means negative or positive. It just means honest about Rich Paul, Clutch Sports, and LeBron James. You're talking about the role they played in these Anthony Davis negotiations, and I think we've all come to see how powerful they are. In turn, they go and watch Duke versus Virginia, and I got to say it was in Virginia. Earlier I said it was at Duke. It was at the University of Virginia, and people might have raised some eyebrows. LeBron thinks that's unfair, and he even brought up race in that equation. Do you think that is fair of LeBron in turn?
To bring up race?
To bring up race, and also to be like, why are people raising their eyebrows at us going to see Zion and Duke?
I think LeBron was right to bring up the raising of the eyebrows. I said on First Take that I agree with that. I do not believe race should have been brought up into this equation at all. There are many outstanding African-American agents, Bill Duffy, guys like the Goodwin brothers, Aaron and Eric, along with others, that, Leon Rose and others who represent NBA players. They happen to be black. So don't come to me and tell me that people are going after Rich Paul and LeBron James because they're black, because some of the people that go after them are black. So that doesn't hold water. But it does need to be mentioned that when LeBron James points out or Rich Paul points out that they've gone to see folks play before, that Shaq came to see LeBron when he was in high school, that AI came to see guys when they were high school players or in college. Those are valid points.
Yeah, but Stephen A., this is what I said to that. LeBron isn't Shaq. See, Shaq and AI were just basketball players, and I'm not diminishing them. They were just superstars and legends. LeBron is a superstar, a legend, and a mogul. A production and Hollywood mogul and an agency mogul. And so when people see him and see how active Clutch was with AD, and now see him hovering around Duke, yeah, eyebrows are going to get raised.
Well, no, you're not understanding. You and I agree. What I'm telling you is that what LeBron is trying to convince you is that he's just a player and an athlete and a sports fan who appreciates the greatness of guys that are out there. He doesn't want to be seen as an agency mogul. That's what he's trying. He's trying to deny that, Will.
He's trying to play it both ways. In other words, when you're talking about Rich Paul and Clutch Sports, he's like, I'm represented by this guy. He doesn't want us to acknowledge that, excuse me, LeBron James is Clutch Sports. Right.
That LeBron James, a lot of people view LeBron James as having a significant stake in the well-being and the welfare of Clutch Sports. And so because it's viewed in that light, he's not perceived as a guy, an athlete that's being represented by an agency.
So
he's
wants
actually perceived as the agency.
Yeah, he wants us to be blind.
You to do that.
Yeah, he wants us to be blind. Okay, great, cool. Last one, Stephen A. I got to get you on Kaepernick and the AAF. The AAF reportedly recruited Kaepernick, reached out to him. He said, fine, give me $20 million. What are your thoughts?
If they're willing to give him $20 million, he should do it. If they're not willing to give it to him, let him continue trying to sue the National Football League. But the bottom line is that whether or not he's been blackballed or not, people have their views on that. Of course, I believe that he has been. I haven't forgotten he was 1-10 at the start in his last 11 games. He was 3-16 in his last 19 games as a starting quarterback. They didn't complete 60% of his passes, and it was questionable as to whether or not he would be a starting quarterback in the National Football League. None of that escapes me. Do I think that he's been blackballed? Absolutely. But I also think it's worth noting that if you think it's just because he took a knee, wait a minute, he is suing the league, and there's very few employers that would take care of you if you're trying to sue them at the same time. So I think those are things that can't be ignored. You got to pay attention to it. Again, I'm not absolving the owners out there who have successfully gone about the business of blackballing Colin Kaepernick, but I'm just saying his hands are not completely clean in this matter, and I think that's worth noting.
All right, it's Stephen A. Smith on the Stephen A. Smith Radio Show. Go have fun at All-Star Weekend. Go hobnob. Be big time. I'll see you back on Monday here in New York.
All right, my man. Thank you again.
All right, take care, Stephen A. It's Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. today as he's down in Charlotte for the All-Star Game. By the way, need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. Speaking of Colin Kaepernick, here is a joint statement from the NFL and Kaepernick and Eric Reid on settling the collusion suit. For the past several months, counsel for Mr. Kaepernick and Mr. Reid have engaged in an ongoing dialogue with representatives of the NFL. As a result of those discussions, the parties have decided to resolve the pending grievances. The resolution of this matter is subject to a confidentiality agreement, so there will be no further comment by any party. Wow. There is breaking news. Right at the end of our Stephen A. Smith conversation, Nuno puts this up for me. It's the NFL, Kaepernick, and Eric Reid together putting out a statement. Their collusion lawsuit, Kaepernick and Reid, against the NFL, now settled. That settlement will be sealed. It'll be private. You and I will not get to know the terms of that settlement. I'm sure we will not know Or it would be very difficult for us to know what financial payout there was. And by then extension, we could see what kind of perceived guilt that would imply. See, here's the thing about lawsuits. Whenever a lawsuit is settled, people assume that means one party is admitting to either A, the weakness of their case on one side, or B, the admission of guilt on the other. It isn't. A lot of times, what's going on is both parties just wanting it to end, wanting it to go away. The whole, by the way, legal system is designed to get to this point. Arbitration, you've heard of that term? Lawsuits, the whole system is designed. I'm telling you, this is a guy who went to law school, practiced a small bit. The whole point is to avoid a trial. My dad was a plaintiff's attorney growing up, prided himself on being like a Perry Mason, wanted to always be in the courtroom, wanted to make his argument, wanted to stand up and yell objection, wanted to win. I grew up like that. I wanted to win. I went to law school for that reason because I idolized my dad. I watched him do it. By the time I went to law school, late 90s, early 2000s, I could already see nobody goes to court anymore. Nobody goes to trial. Nobody argues it anymore. It's all paperwork pushing and going towards settlements. Why? Because that's more efficient. The only way to really get in the courtroom was to be a criminal lawyer, and so that's the path that I went. I started doing clerking at criminal law firms, taking interest in taking classes in criminal law, be a prosecutor, defense attorney. That's how you get in the courtroom. Because on the civil side, and this is what Kaepernick and Reid's case against the NFL was, a civil suit, nobody wants to drag it out. Nobody wants to pay the money to keep the lawyers fighting. Nobody wants to pay for the trial. Nobody wants to potentially lose the money, so a settlement comes. That's really how the system is designed. Now, it could be an admission of guilt. It could be the NFL going, we don't want this stuff to see the light of day. Maybe Jerry Jones and Roger Goodell did talk and say, can't let this guy back in the league. Or maybe Kaepernick and Reid realized this isn't going to get anywhere. This is better to make it go away. I don't know, and we won't know as long as it's sealed. But now let's move the conversation to the next step. Now that Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid's collusion case with the NFL has been settled, what door does that open? Is Colin Kaepernick now more readily accepted into coming back into the NFL? Certainly, while you're suing, as Stephen A. just pointed out to us, while you're suing a potential employer, or you have a grievance, a CBA grievance against a potential employer, you're not going to have a very good luck getting hired by that employer. Does this make it easier for Kaepernick to re-enter the league? He's 31 years old. His last 2 seasons not great, but his last season, pretty good stats. He enters a league where the free agents, he enters the potential availability in a league where it's Nick Foles on the trade market. Joe Flacco just got traded. Teddy Bridgewater. Ryan Tannehill. These are your options out there. How does Colin Kaepernick stack up against him? And what does he want? Because the news before this was the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, offered an opportunity to Colin Kaepernick, and his response was $20 million. Less than 24 hours later, we hear the news that his lawsuit, his collusion grievance with the NFL has been settled. Let's go to Andrew in Orlando. What's up, Andrew? You're on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain today.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey.
Yeah, I got to say that, I was hearing about your Kaepernick talk, and I agree with you that maybe the price of admission for $20 million to Kaepernick to join the AAF is a little bit high. But at the same time, I got to push back on you because what exactly does he have to gain? I mean, if you're using the AAF as a vehicle like you said he should do to kind of ingratiate himself back with NFL or getting back into the league, then it's good. But I don't think there's any reason for him to don't do that because what does he have to gain? I mean, you're playing with players that probably won't have a good skill level, that won't be able to add anything to what he's doing as far as being on the football field, and it won't be a good look for him as far as getting back into the NFL.
Okay, Andrew, let me answer your question,
he's doing the
okay?
right thing by not doing that.
Let me answer your question. You guys don't have to take him down, Nuno Cat, or don't have to get rid of him. I'm going to try to answer Andrew's question. I think it goes like this, Andrew. I think there's two things he stands to gain. First of all, it's funny how this works, how news cycles work. If the conversation on Kaepernick wasn't always stuck around the anthem protest or the protest during the national anthem, if it wasn't always stuck around, will he kneel, won't he kneel? If it always wasn't stuck around, honestly, a lot of the issues he wants it to be stuck around. And I'm not passing value judgment on that. I'm not telling you right or wrong. I'm just telling you that's where it is. If the conversation on Kaepernick actually moved forward to football, to play on the field, and even if that was through the AAF, that would be a change in how we talk about and view Kaepernick. And that would help Colin Kaepernick, the football player. It might not help Colin Kaepernick, the symbol, the martyr, the cause-oriented human being, but it would help Colin Kaepernick, the football player, because the latest thing we saw, the latest thing we talked about, the latest thing in the front of our mind would be Colin Kaepernick on a football field. And then second, I just think, while you're right, the AAF isn't ideal, you have to arrive at a place at times where you're like, ideal isn't going to be my option. I'm going to have to take less than ideal to move back to ideal. I'm going to have to take a step back to move forward. Did he have to take a step that far back, all the way to the AAF? Could he have taken a step to backup quarterback in the NFL? Could he have taken a step to the Baltimore Ravens? Could he have taken a step to the Seattle Seahawks? I don't know. But I know that it might have taken a step back to move forward. What do you say to that, Andrew?
Well, I say that, he doesn't have to take a step back that far at all. As far as I'm concerned, he was in the Super Bowl. He had a chance to go to a Super Bowl another time. He's already done enough on the football field in the NFL at the highest level possible to speak for himself. To step back and say, I'm going to play for the AAF, and you guys are going to pay me $20 million if they would agree to that. I would have said, okay, that's fine. AAF needs storylines. They need whatever it is to kind of boost their ratings because they have good first-week ratings, but you can't really expect that to continue with the talent level that they have in that league. He has a better chance of making an impact on a community, a culture, doing what he's doing, being a martyr, standing up for political injustice, standing up for what's right, fighting against the NFL, which he obviously is, as I say, he won the case, even though, when the arbitration comes in, there's no real winner or loser. It just makes it go away. But in my eyes, that's a W for him and Reid.
All right.
I think he has more of an impact doing that than playing in the AAF.
I hear you, Andrew, and I appreciate your point of view. Even if I disagree at certain points, I appreciate your point of view. I just think we have to be clear and be real, because that's my whole game. Let's be real. Let's be truthful. Then what we need to be real about, and I appreciate the call, Andrew, what we need to be real about is then it's more important to Kaepernick, more important to you, that to be a martyr for a cause, be a symbol, than to be a football player. Because I'm not arguing that he hasn't proven on the NFL field. I'm not arguing that he has to take a step all the way back to the AAF. I'm just arguing that you have to be real. And despite those Super Bowl appearances and despite those stats you rattled off, Andrew, you know what was real? He was unemployed. That's where you stand. That's where you are. Do you want to be employed? Do you want to be a football player? Okay. And what's the next best first step? The breaking news is that Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reid, and the NFL have put out a joint statement. The collusion grievance between those parties has been settled. What's next for Colin Kaepernick? ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $668. We'll keep talking about what's next for Kaepernick, but I also want to lay out for you this, why a major news story in the mainstream media cycle could actually affect Kevin Durant to the Knicks. That's next on the Stephen A. Smith Show, hosted by Will Cain today on ESPN Radio.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people!
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook.
In the mornings on First Take. We just had Stephen A. on the show. You can go back and get that on the Stephen A. Smith podcast on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, iTunes. I want to lay out for you in just a moment how one of the biggest news stories of the day, of the last 24 hours, could actually affect Kevin Durant to the Let's find out more at progressive.com. The breaking news of the hour, really, of the last 30 minutes is that the NFL and Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid have settled their collusion grievance together. A joint statement was put out just hours ago where it was said in unison that they have settled this confidentially. We do not know the terms of the settlement. We do not know anything, really, beyond the fact that this settlement has now, or this collusion grievance is now put behind them. What's interesting is if you go scan through social media right now, everyone's declaring victory. You can hear everybody saying, oh, this is a clear win for Kaepernick. It's an admission of guilt by the NFL. Kaepernick getting paid. That seems to be the take of the hour. Kaepernick getting paid. I don't really understand that because we have no idea how much money was involved in this settlement. This is from Michael McCann. He does sports law and contributes to Sports Illustrated. I find him really good on sports and legal issues. I'll read you his tweet. Once arbitrator Stephen Burbank, that was the name of the arbitrator in this grievance, denied the NFL's request for summary judgment last August, meaning Colin Kaepernick had shown a genuine issue of material fact, the NFL realized they could lose to Kaepernick if they wait for Burbank to rule. A settlement is a draw and avoids a loss. I want to explain that, but I'm going to read you one more. This is by Darren Heitner. He's also a lawyer in the sports world. He's also really good. He responds, similarly, as the hearing approaches, Kaepernick and his team may have appreciated the tough burden to prove collusion, and settlement then could be a win-win for both parties. Okay, so here's how that works. So last August, the NFL filed for summary judgment. Summary judgment means, I'm just going to distill this in the way he's been, this is all BS. That's what summary judgment means. Their case is crap, and he's got nothing going for him. And it's BS, and there's nothing to debate here, and there's nothing they could win on. Now, when you get poured out on summary judgment, when you lose on summary judgment, it's embarrassing for you. Like, why'd you bring this before us? This is a joke. So the NFL, and everybody files for summary judgment, by the way, in every case. So the NFL lost on summary judgment. That's what he means, McCann, when he writes, Colin Kaepernick had shown a genuine issue of material fact. That meant we needed to find out more. There is a potential problem here. Let's have a fact-finding mission, discovery, and a trial on what those facts were, okay? Once the NFL gets to that point, they have to start doing a cost-benefit analysis. They have to realize the potential that they could lose. And that potential for a loss for the NFL, think about what the biggest loss is. Is it financial? No. It's PR. Can't lose. You can't lose. So any amount of money is probably worth making it go away. Now, is that an admission of guilt? It depends on how much they had to pay. On the flip side, Colin Kaepernick's team could have gotten to this point and gone, we're not going to be able to hold up our burden here. They have the burden. They have to prove that the NFL colluded against Colin Kaepernick. It's on them. They have the affirmative case, right? You follow me? They have the burden. They could say, we're not going to be able to meet our burden. Let's settle. It's hard to know. Draw, win-win, win-loss, until you know exactly what's in the terms of the settlement, and we don't know. I don't know that we ever will know exactly how much. But there is one other thing we can take away from this. Colin Kaepernick turned down an offer from the AAF, or responded, in fact, that he would play for the AAF for $20 million. If he did win a settlement against the NFL, if he did, as Emmanuel Acho, ESPN contributor and college football player at the University of Texas, says, secure the bag, well, he could play football in the AAF for $250K, right? He didn't need the $20 million. Or maybe he's ready to now play in the NFL. Maybe this is bygones be bygones, forgiveness all around. You can play in the NFL. It does draw back into question how much Colin Kaepernick wants to and is ready to play football again. Let's hit a couple of your calls really quickly. Cole in Georgia. What's up, Cole?
Hey, Will, how you doing?
I'm good, man. What's up?
With Colin Kaepernick, let me first say I'm not anti-Kaepernick. I'm a fan of Kaepernick. I just think, how do we know he's still the same player he was 2.5 years ago? And isn't that the exact kind of player the AAF was designed for?
That's exactly
was someone
right.
trying to get back into the league?
That's exactly right.
I don't see why he should scoff at an offer from the AAF.
All right, thanks for the call, Cole. That's a really good point. For all that Colin Kaepernick was and all the statistics we point out, and we had Andrew call in from Orlando a little bit earlier talking about how good Colin Kaepernick was at other times in his career, it was 2016, the last time he played. And that is exactly what the AAF is designed to do, to give players a launching pad either into or back into the NFL. Will Kane filling in for Stephen A. Smith today on the Stephen A. Smith Radio Show. Let's go to KJ in L.A. What's up, KJ?
How you doing, Will Kane?
I'm good, man. What's up?
Will Kane, you had me laughing when you were saying keep it real, because you remind me of Eddie Murphy in the Life movie when he said that keep it real and started busting out that song, The Upper Room.
All right. By the way, KJ, of Eddie Murphy movies, like one of the lowest. I'm not telling you it was a bad movie because it was Martin Lawrence and you wanted to see that, but I mean, for you to be quoting that movie, you are deep into the Eddie Murphy library, right? Like you throw out 48 Hours, you throw out Beverly Hills Cop, you throw out, anything else. If Coming to America, you went deep, man, with Life.
Yeah, because that's what it triggered when you said it. But on the Colin Kaepernick issue, what saddened me is I believe he should have took the humility role because, like the previous caller said, nobody knows his skill factor. So $20 million is way too much, but he would have definitely got his numbers up, and that's all it probably would have took 1 year to get his numbers back. But it saddens me because it seems like he's still making these bad choices. Because remember, when he went into the interview with Baltimore that Ray Allen set up, he took his girlfriend, the side chick, and told her about the meeting after they came out, and she went back in there calling them racial slurs. So I'm like, are you serious? So now with the final point of the NFL, my personal opinion, if you do the research, his attorney team, when they started this lawsuit, requested all Jerry Jones, Texas of some of the owners. So that's why I believe personally they settled this because, he had evidence. You can go research that. So I think they just wanted to just get this away and close it out and give another opportunity.
All right, KJ, I appreciate the call. That may be. I don't know. I don't know. By the way, I don't know that he got all those texts either. Just because you request the discovery doesn't mean you get all that stuff. But maybe he did, and maybe he found something out, and maybe it scared the NFL, and maybe they settled it, or maybe he didn't, and maybe he had nothing, and it was a big bag of nothing that he couldn't prove, and so he settled it. It's a confidential settlement. Win-win, draw, I don't know. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance, and Will Kane hosting for Stephen A. today. You can get me on Twitter at Will Kane or on Instagram, Will Kane. So when I told everybody I want to do this story, boy, did they get nervous. I said, listen, you got to understand, there's this massive story in the news cycle right now, a massive story, and everybody's talking about it. But there actually is a connection to sports. Now, I don't want to get political. That's not my goal. I'm not going to preach to you any kind of politics. I'm not going to advocate for a position. I'm going to do my best. I really am with you right here. I don't want you sitting and go, Will's spinning it, Will's giving you. I don't, okay? My approach to this on my show and sitting here on Stephen A's show is I want to respect you. And the way I respect you is being honest with you. Okay, with my biases, and you can know then my bias. Anybody who's listening to me probably has some idea of which way I lean on various issues, but you know all that and know this. I just see a connection here, potentially. I'm not telling you. Listen, okay, let's just do this. Last night, news came out that Amazon had pulled out of putting one of their company headquarters in New York City. Now, Amazon was looking for several different locations to put new company headquarters. They looked at Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Northern Virginia, which they selected, and New York City, which they selected. Now, that Amazon headquarter in New York City was going to bring, reports suggest, $25,000 to this city where I'm sitting today. Now, because of the political environment and a lot of people who felt like the tax incentives extended to Amazon were wrong. There were people that felt like it was wrong and it's not right and it's not good for the economy. There's people that believe that. Amazon said, to hell with it, we're out. Now, what I want to lay out for you is how that mainstream story could give some pause and cause some nervousness inside MSG, inside Knicks headquarters, and their pursuit of Kevin Durant. I'm going to lay that out for you next on the Stephen A. Smith Show. By the way, if you missed any of today's show, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One, what's in your wallet? KD to the Knicks? Not so fast. Next on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
Learn what affects your credit scores and what you can do to improve them with Credit Karma. Maybe you need to dispute an error in your credit report, or you're paying too much interest. Credit Karma can help with that. Visit CreditKarma.com or download the app now. That's CreditKarma.com.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit Geico.com.
Chase, Will Kane, filling in for Stephen A. today. Your man's will be back with you on Monday. I'll be hanging out with Max on First Take, filling in for Molly on Monday. So come hang out with us then and catch me whenever you can, 3 to 6 Eastern Time, right after Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. I asked a little bit earlier, I said, how come when it comes to GOAT conversations, let's set aside GOAT. Let's not do LeBron versus MJ. How about just when we talk about best players of all time in the NBA, we always focus on wings. LeBron, Kobe, MJ. Man, there's just such a big man bias. Why? Why not a little more Kareem talk? Why not Tim Duncan talk? We got titles in that debate. We got points scored over the whole career in that debate. Why not? I'll give you one answer somebody forwarded to me here in just a moment on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Tune in this Sunday for the 68th NBA All-Star Game live from Charlotte, presented by Boost Mobile. Coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on most ESPN radio stations. Okay, so here's the deal. Again, I'm not trying to be political about this. I think there's a major news story that you can draw direct connections to Kevin Durant and his potential as a New York Knick. Yesterday, it was announced that Amazon was going to pull out one of its potential headquarters in the United States, pull it out of New York City. The political environment, and you can, whatever you believe, okay? You can believe that the tax incentives extended to Amazon were good or bad. You can believe they were crony capitalism or the cost of doing business. Either way, whatever you believe, and I'm not here to tell you, we're drawing connections, we're peeling back the onion here a little bit. When Amazon decided to pull out, that cost this city 25,000 jobs. It would have not just been, by the way, those 25,000 jobs. When you have a foothold, a big tech company come in like that, you create an ecosystem of entrepreneurship and spin-off businesses. Look, ask yourself, why are so many in Silicon Valley? Because others are. You draw talent, you can hire more people, you can spin off of other companies. It creates a little bubble, an ecosystem of technology that's bigger than just the singular company that's coming in. And by the way, $25,000 is 25,000 jobs is a lot of jobs. So that spinoff effect was pretty large. That's now not coming to New York. You take that story now, set to the side. Let me give you another story. Kevin Durant is a venture capitalist. He has used all his money, well, not all of it, because he's been very philanthropic, very charity-oriented, and given back. But he wants to be a tech entrepreneur. He's in Silicon Valley right now, in that Northern California area with the Warriors. He's already set up a fund. He's already invested in some companies. And reports are that he and his business partner, Rich Kleiman, are moving that to New York City. They want to headquarter their venture capital fund, their tech fund, in the city. And people are looking at that because the moves are already starting to be made. And going, whoa. This KD to the Knicks thing, this is real. It's not just the cap slots. It's not just availability. It's not just trading Kristaps to unload yourself from Tim Hardaway Jr.'s contract and Courtney Lee's contract. It's from the other side of the equation as well. Maybe Kevin Durant, maybe KD wants to be a Knick. Maybe this is real. He's moving the business side here to New York. Now, if you don't think that story yesterday raised eyebrows on anyone wanting to set up a tech fund or a tech business in New York City, you're crazy. Now, I'm not you can still say, is the right decision, is the wrong decision, that's yours, and that's fine. I'm not here to debate that. But you got to understand, you don't think that raised eyebrows in the tech community? A community in which Kevin Durant wants to be a big player in? You don't think that might have elicited a Come on. From the Garden? You don't think that might have elicited a little bit of a fist pump from Oracle? You don't think Joe Lacob and Golden State might have been like, who's going to be sitting courtside at our games next year in our new stadium in Silicon Valley? Who might you be able to hobnob with there? Versus what just went down in New York. Now, I'm not telling you that Kevin Durant's now not coming to the Knicks. I'm not telling you that Rich Kleiman's going to look at that and go, oh, hell with that, we're not going to New York City. I'm not telling you a cause and effect relationship here. What I am telling you is you got to see some connections, some stories, and you got to believe that raised some eyebrows on a potential KD to the Knicks move. The Stephen A. Smith Show is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics. Taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. You got to see the connections, right? Don't take that too far. Don't say I said something I didn't say. I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? Will Cain Show next on ESPN Radio.